shapes and forms of purples and blues, these kind of amorphous clouds that drift by on a scale that you cannot comprehend. Darkened spheres and objects kind of passing you as you drift into nothing, into this void with distant dots of light and sparkle. Sensations conflicting and causing your heart rate to jump, and then there you see this faint gray glow approach and stop. Your speed comes to a slow crawl and then halts.
Father, I hope I do not let you down.
On your gamble, you failed. You're stupid. Smart as you are, you're stupid with this.
Hello, stream. Morning, Cameron. How we doing? I have to try real hard to record one audiobook chapter before I have to take my kids to the bus. Processing invoices. Gotta love it. Hey, what's up, School's Bane? All right. All right. Check, check, check. Oops. Check, check, check. Check, check. There we go. All right, going to go refresh my coffee, and then we are going to record this sumbitch. All right. Mm-mm-mm. Is my chat box broken on the screen? Nope, never mind. All right. Yerrin, recording day 9, starting with 30 seconds of silence, beginning now. All right. Chapter 12. Yerrin, Chapter 12. After they had recovered from their shock, Lauren sent Jem to check the inn, but he returned to report that Weil and Shiyun had not yet returned. At first, Lauren wanted to wait for them, but Annis counseled against that. "The city has a curfew now," she said. "Nightfall is close at hand, and we will have a harder time of it if we do not go at once." "And I do not think you should go at all," said Chet. "If this is a trap, you will be in grave danger. Send one of us as an intermediary instead." How does Carrie sound? Does anyone remember? Do I remember? The answer is no. There we go. "It is not a trap," said Caradwen, frowning. "And besides, I am the intermediary," said Lauren. "Though I think you are right in one respect. Not all of us should go. I will take Annis. The rest of you remain here in case something goes wrong." "I am coming of well." Of well. "I am coming as well, of course," said Jem, "but you knew that already." Lauren sighed and turned to Chet and Uzo. "Wait here for Weil and Shiyun to return and tell them what has happened. We will send for you as soon as we know it is safe." "Yes, Nightblade," said Uzo. Chet's eyes were troubled. "I do not like this." Chet... Nope. Lauren gave him a smile. "This could be the best news we have had in some time. If June remains alive, he can doubtless help us get to Damaris. I must at least try." He turned away. "I see that. But please return as quick as you may." Lauren nodded. She had to stop herself from reaching out to take his hand. In the back of her mind, a voice whispered, "He did not insist on coming with you. Is this when he plans to leave?" She forced the thought away and turned to Caradwen. "After you." Caradwen nodded and raised her hood before leading them into the street. Lauren and the children did the same as they passed through the crowds. They made their way south and west, and soon they had come very close to the place where the river entered the city. Coffee. Oh. Not far away was the palace itself, but Caradwen turned from it and took them due west. Here the homes were all grand and towering, with multiple floors and little courtyards walled off from the rest of the city. This must be where the mightiest families lived. It had been on... It had been the same on the High King's seat and the other great cities Lauren had visited. Power gathered to power, and wealth to wealth. Soon they came to a manor with a hipped roof and two great wings stretching forth from either side of the front door. Surrounding it was no stone wall, but only a wrought iron gate. Guards watched them as they went around the side. Two more guards stood at the smaller rear entrance. When Caradwen threw back her hood, they nodded in greeting. "Welcome back," said one of the guards. "But who are these with you?" "Friends," said Caradwen. "They are here to help the mistress's special guest." The guard looked at her companion. He shrugged, and she turned back. "We shall have to send word." Caradwen nodded. "Of course." The second guard left to deliver the message. Caradwen stood back, folding her arms to keep warm. Lauren appraised the manor. "Whose home is this?" Caradwen glanced at her and then at the home. "She is a merchant. Her name is Yushan of the family Ying. She remains loyal to—" She paused to look around, but the street was empty save for the guard. "To King Jun. She has helped us conceal him since Wojan's betrayal." "Is she trustworthy?" said Annis. "Wojan knows the king is alive, of course, and I imagine he has offered a considerable sum for his capture." "I imagine he has, but we have heard no word of it," said Caradwen. "It is not exactly something he can publicly declare, since his right to the throne depends on his grace being dead already." Soon the second guard returned, and he gave the first a curt nod. She opened the gate and motioned them all inside, and Caradwen took them in through the manor's service entrance. Just inside they met the merchant Yushan. She was tiny and fat, her round head balanced on her round body like a snowman's. As Lauren and the others shook the snow from their clothing, she took them in with sharp eyes.
"Well met. I am Yushan of the family Ying. I was told you are here to help." "I trust those who are here in my employ, but even my trust only goes so far. I would ask you not to speak so plainly, not of whom you serve nor of anything you might see while you are here. Absolute discretion is the only thing that has kept my special guest alive so far. Do you bear any proof that you are who you say you are?" "Well met. I am Yushan of the family Ying. I was told you are here to help."
"And to receive help in turn," said Lauren. "We serve the High King Enelin." Yushan's eyes flashed.
"I trust those who are here in my employ, but even my trust only goes so far. I would ask you not to speak so plainly, not of whom you serve, nor of anything you might see while you are here. Absolute discretion is the only thing that has kept my special guest alive so far." Do you bear any proof that you are who you say you are?"
Lauren produced her writ, and Yushan scanned it quickly, but her hard look softened not a whit.
"It looks to be in order," she said. "Yet I still find myself suspicious. We only sent for aid a few days ago. How did you respond so quickly?"
"That is easily answered," said Annis. "We did not respond at all, but were traveling on other business when we heard of the turmoil in the capital. We came to Danfon with no idea that your special guest was alive, for we pursued another goal entirely."
Yushan sniffed. "That has the ring of truth to it. Very well. Follow me, but be warned. I have guards aplenty, and not only the ones you can see. You will not come too close to my special guest, or they will cut you down. The fact that 2 of you are children will not stay their hands." "Children?" said Jem, lifting his chin. "I would wager I have seen more battles and traveled more miles than you have."
Lauren slapped his shoulder hard, but to her surprise, Yushan's face finally cracked into a smile.
"I like you, boy," said the merchant. "Come then."
She snatched Jem's hand and drew his arm into her own as she led them into the manor. Jem looked back at Lauren in a small panic as she forced him along, but Lauren only smiled at him and shrugged. Caradwen walked beside Lauren and Annis as Yushan took them through the rear entry hall into the kitchen, and then opened the door to a staircase leading down. At the bottom of the staircase was a pantry with shelves along the walls, but no one waited within. Lauren's hackles rose, fearing a trap. Yushan turned to them.
"Caradwen, if you would. My bones are old."
Caradwen nodded and went forwards to one of the shelves. She knocked on the side of it, thrice and then twice. After a long moment's pause, 4 knocks sounded from the other side. Caradwen squatted and took one end of the shelf, heaving it from its place. "Let me help," said Lauren. She seized the shelf, and Caradwen gave her a grateful smile that made her freckles dance. They swung the shelf out together. Behind the shelf was a small doorway that Lauren had to stoop to get through. A chamber lay beyond, with rugs on the floor and chairs and a table. A chamber lay beyond, with rugs on the floor and chairs and a table in the center, but the room was empty. Lauren wondered briefly who had knocked on the back of the shelf, but then Yushan led them through this chamber to another door. This one she opened without knocking, and inside they found their prize. The chamber into which the door opened was The chamber into which the door opened was far larger and grander than the first. Leading off from it were 4 more doors, but Lauren had eyes only for the people in the room. 2 guards stood before the party, clad in armor of leather and chain. They had their hands on the thin swords at their belts, but they had not yet drawn them. Behind them was a larger man with a short beard, whose hair was cut close to his scalp, revealing a long scar that ran back from his forehead. But behind them all was a man who But behind them all was a man who Lauren knew at once must be King June. The king was not as tall as she might have guessed, certainly not as tall as any of his guards, but he had an imperious air that commanded attention. It was not only in the immaculate cut of his hair, nor in the fine robes that he wore, though Lauren guessed they were worth more than all the cloth in the whole tailor's shop she had visited that day. Nor was it in his eyes, though they were piercing and wise in equal measure. It was the way he held himself, the subtle pose of his body that somehow elevated him above the others in the room. Lauren had seen such presence before. The High King Enelin was much the same. She almost felt compelled to take a knee. But then she thought of Welmont, and her thoughts soured. She inclined her head instead. "Your Grace?" King June did not answer her. Instead, the man with the long scar stepped forth. "And who are you?" "I am Lauren of the family Nelda, Nightblade of the High King." Lauren pulled the writ from her cloak. "This letter bears her seal, and will show I speak the truth." One of the foremost guards took the writ and handed it to his commander. He did not even glance at it before handing it back to King June. Lauren guessed that he could not read any better than she could. June took the writ and unfolded it. Each movement of his fingers was graceful, and he did not lose his poise even when he held the writ close to read it in the dim light of the room's candles. After a moment his brows rose just a hair. He handed the writ back to his guard, and it was passed forwards to Lauren. "Greetings, Nightblade. You have my gratitude for coming to my city." "I see. Why, then, did you come?" "The family Yerrin. That makes some sense, I suppose. Wojin is too much of a craven to plot rebellion without powerful aid." "But that makes only 2 introductions. The Nightblade has a second companion." "Well met. And what purpose have you here?" "Then you are most welcome. Loyal servants are worthy of the highest honor." "Very well. Whatever your reasons for coming to Danfon, Nightblade, I am glad you are here. I know that I can rely on your help to retake my throne, not only for my sake, but for the sake of my son." That is my go-to outtake voice, Gouldsbane. Hurdy-furdy, gurdy-bear popcorn. "Greetings, Nightblade," said King June. His voice was like silk, and though he was quieter than his guard had been, it only served to make them listen more closely. "You have my gratitude for coming to my city." Lauren bowed her head again on instinct, but she looked up at once to match his gaze. "Of course, Your Grace. But as we have told the Lady Ying, I did not know you were alive when I came to Danfon. It was only by fortune, and by the wits of Caradwen here, that we discovered you at all." "I see," said June. "Why, then, did you come?" "We seek the merchant Damaris of the family Yerrin," said Lauren. "We believe it was she who backed Wojin in his bid for your throne." June frowned. "The family Yerrin. That makes some sense, I suppose. Wojin is too much of a craven to plot rebellion without powerful aid." "Though it should be noted that Damaris does not speak for all the Yerrins," said Annis. "She has been cut off from the family. Though she is dangerous enough on her own, we do not contend with all her—" "Though she is dangerous enough on her own, we do not contend with all the might her clan could bring." The large guard with the scar glared at her. "You speak of we, but who are you, girl?" Annis gulped and lifted her chin. "I am Annis, of the family Yerrin, and I am Damaris's daughter." All three guards tensed, but June lifted a hand at once. "Stay yourselves. I have heard of this girl. She sundered herself from her mother, just as the rest of the family did. We have nothing to fear from her." Annis bowed her head. She had gone a shade paler, and her voice quivered. "Thank you, Your Grace." June inclined his head. "But that makes only 2 introductions. The Nightblade has a second companion." For a moment all was still, and then Jem jerked upright as he realized June was talking about him. "Oh, yes, I am Jem of the family Noctis." He smiled weakly, and then after a moment he added, "Your Grace." June pursed his lips. "Well met. And what purpose have you here?" Lauren was about to answer, but Jem stood forth and threw out his chest. He actually had the audacity to stare down his nose at the king. And then he burped. Real big, real bad. It was built. It seemed like it had been building for a while there, just sort of swelling in the back of his throat. Super, super gross. And he apologizes to anyone who might have been listening. I am the Nightblade's bodyguard." The room was dead silent for a moment. King June's guards stared at Jem, the corners of their lips twitching, while the large one with the scar frowned. But June showed no trace of a smile when he nodded. "Then you are most welcome. Loyal servants are worthy of the highest honor." Then he flapped out his robes and took a seat on the chair behind him. "Very well. Whatever your reasons for coming to Danfon, Nightblade, I am glad you are here. I know that I can rely on your help to retake my throne, not only for my sake, but for the sake of my son." He waved an arm at Caradwen. She bowed and went to one of the room's doors, ducking within for a moment. When she emerged, she had a young boy in tow. His resemblance to June was obvious at once, but where King June had an imperious and commanding air, the prince's eyes shone with curiosity as he looked at Lauren and her friends. He went to his father's side and then gave them all a deep bow. "My son, Prince Senlin of the family Fae," said June. "It is an honor to make your acquaintance," said Prince Senlin. Annis bowed in response. Jem stood stricken for a moment, his mouth hanging slightly open, before he did the same. But Lauren only inclined her head again. "Well met," she said. "But, Your Grace, I must correct you on one point. I was sent here on a mission from the High King. That mission has not changed. I am sure we all hope Damaris's capture will help you regain your rightful place as king, but her capture is my only purpose in the city." June frowned. Barely a small turn of the lips, but it chilled the air in the room. Annis tensed and put a hand on Lauren's arm, but June spoke before she could. "As an envoy of the High King and a servant of her laws, you have a duty to help me restore order." "I know my duty," said Lauren. "Her Majesty herself was the one who gave it to me, Your Grace." The room was silent for a long moment, silent enough for Lauren to hear her own pulse in her ears. Her hands had formed to fists without her realizing it. June studied her for a moment. Then his eyes widened, and he cocked his head. "Ah, I believe you Ah, I believe I understand. You are a girl of Selvin, are you not? I can hear it in your voice. No doubt you resent my kingdom's role in the Battle of Wellmont." Lauren frowned. "Who would not? I was in the city when your forces attacked. I watched its buildings burn and its citizens roast alive in flames, not only the warriors but the simple folk as well. And it is not the first time you have attacked Selvin without provocation." To her mounting irritation, June nodded. Of course I understand. And who could blame you? Yet I am a king. It is part of my duty to bring prosperity to my people and to keep them happy. You do not even deny it. June spread his hands. What would you have me deny? I have made war with the blessing of the Senate, and my people have prospered as a result. Annis held up a hand. Mayhap we could turn our discussion to the matter of your people have prospered, have they? Said Lauren. Yet some of them, many of them, died for it. And so have my people. If your son were on the battlements, I doubt you would think so lightly of war. I have fought in war myself, said June. When he is of age, Senlin will do the same. If his fate is to die, then it is as it shall be. If his fate is to die, that is as it shall be. The 9 lands make widows and orphans of us all in the end. Lauren snorted and gave him a savage grin. I have heard that wisdom before. It came from Damaris of the family Yerrin, who took your throne from you. June frowned. For the first time, Lauren thought she saw a flash of anger in his eyes. But Anna stepped forth and spoke loud enough to quell the conversation. If I may, she said. Much has happened to us this day, Your Grace, and we are only recently come from the road. I must take a moment to speak with my compatriot. May we retire to the outer chamber for a moment only? June blew a small sigh through his nose. He looked away and waved a hand in dismissal. Lauren almost refused, but Annis took her arm and gripped it tight. Relenting, Lauren followed her into the sitting room outside, and Jem came at her heels. Thankfully, none of the bodyguards followed, nor did the merchant Yushan. Behind them, someone closed the door with a soft click. Annis fixed Lauren with a stern glare. You must control yourself. Lauren's nostrils flared and her jaw worked. She wanted to argue against Annis. In fact, she wanted to shout at her. But she restrained herself to terse words through gritted teeth. He speaks of death and killing the way a sane man speaks of cutting his fingernails. I know, said Annis. You know I agree with you. I, too, was at the Battle of Wellmont. Yet you must realize that June is not entirely in control of his own position. He must do as... He must do as the people expect, and he cannot thwart the will of the Senate, for they would make things very difficult for him. Power comes with laws that June must obey, and one of the most important laws is that might always requires sacrifice. He does what his position forces him to do. Do you think that makes him blameless? Said Lauren. Your mother taught you to be cruel and a killer, yet you rose above it. And many others have not, said Annis. It does not earn them forgiveness, yet it can give us some sort of understanding. Whatever Dorsey's faults, one of June's chief loyalties aligns with ours. He is a servant to the High King. Wojin serves only himself, and he is allied with my mother. Lauren held her gaze. What will happen if we put June back on the throne? Annis's mouth opened with a quick reply, but then she paused and sighed. In truth, one day he will likely make war on Selvin again. Yet Wojin will certainly do the same, and restoring June's kingship will stave off the greater war, the one between the High King and the Necromancer. June and the Senate may be dealt with later, when Underrealm itself is no longer in danger. Indeed, if we survive this mess, I will help you fight him. Lauren turned away with a frown. Then she pushed past Annis and made for the door to June's chamber. Lauren! Annis reached for her arm, but Lauren threw off her hand and opened the door. The bodyguards looked up. The one with the scar had gone to June's side and was leaning over him, muttering. He straightened, and June turned to Lauren. She stopped at the front of the room, feet apart, hands at her sides. I will return you to your throne, your grace, she said. Behind her she felt Annis freeze in place. But once I have, I will expect you to remember that it was the Nightblade, a woman of Selvin, who put you there. And her friends, said Jem brightly. Lauren did not turn, but she heard Annis cuff the boy's arm. June met her gaze, unflinching. Then, after a long moment, he inclined his head. If you manage it, I will not forget, and I will see to it that the Senate does not... And I will see to it that the Senate does not forget either. Lauren nodded. Very well. I suppose we had better get to planning. Actually, said Annis, holding up a finger, while I appreciate our eagerness, we are all of us weary, as I said, and doubtless His Grace must spend time considering how our arrival may work into whatever plans he had already begun to concoct. I recommend that we retire to our other friends and resume this work on the morrow. A sensible proposal, said June. I accept. But the bodyguard with the long scar scowled. You cannot take lodgings in the city, he said. It poses far too great a risk to you, and now, therefore, to His Grace. I will have one of my men fetch your companions, but you will bed here. Lauren glanced at Annis. The girl tossed her head slightly and nodded. Very well. Very well, said Lauren. Then she turned to the merchant, Yushan. And I thank you for your generous hospitality. Yushan bowed low, and her sharp look softened with a smile. I already forget what she sounds like. Wait, what the hell? Oh, fucking A. There we go. It is my honor. I am only ashamed that His Grace must bed here in my basement while I continue to move about my house in freedom. You have nothing to be ashamed of, said June. It is only by your loyalty that we have survived this far. When I am restored to the throne, you and I may discuss how best to fill Wojin's position in the Senate. He will have difficulty holding his seat when he is a corpse. Yushan bowed still lower. Then she beckoned Lauren and her friends out of the room and led them up into her manor. One of the bodyguards came with them and then ducked out the manor's rear entrance to fetch their friends. Lauren pulled Annis aside to murmur to her. Why did you call an end to the meeting? She said. Annis blinked at her as if it were obvious. Because of the exact reasons I said. Mayhap you were not ready to fall over from exhaustion, but I am. At the moment I could hardly plan an escape from this manor, much... At the moment I could hardly plan an escape from this manor, much less the overthrow of a king. Jem snickered, but ahead of them the merchant Yushan turned on them sharply. You shall not need to plot any escape from me, but if you do, I hope you will not damage my tapestries. They are expensive, and remember that we who are old have not necessarily taken leave of our senses. My ears, in particular, are still sharp. Lauren barely hid a smile. Annis flushed and bowed low. I will remember it, my lady. Yushan turned and led them on down the hall. Beer to beer beer. Yeah, not too bad on that one. Oof. Okay, I don't know if I'm down to record another one after I take the kids. So we're going to move out to the desk. Maybe I will. I think I actually might try to. Chapter 20. We marched at a breakneck pace, sleeping 6 hours each night and pressing ourselves hard during the daylight. Each time we stopped, Mag and I consulted Kuhn's map again. We evaluated each day's progress and made plans for the next. I put every ounce of my woodcraft to its utmost use, and Mag racked her mind for every detail she could remember of the countryside. If Kuhn's soldiers had not been so green, I doubt we could have carried off the march in time. When soldiers have never seen combat, their first outing seems like a thrilling adventure. They will march and train harder, and they find it easy to call upon inner reserves of strength and energy. These things fade once they learn the reality of war. But since ours had not yet absorbed that lesson...
Okay. And now I gotta take my kids to the bus. I will return momentarily, and I will leave you with the sweet, sweet tunes of Autumn Orange. Back in a few.
There's 3 that have been stolen. Yeah, they're nice. 2 of them, one's weird. One of them tried to kill you, the other one's adorable, but what do you... What do you expect to do with her? How is she going to help you do what you want to do? She's as much a liability as anything else. Fucking parrot, gesticulating as much. You should just go. You've told too much. Told too much. I'm going. It's time to go. My name was Bren Aldrich Elmondroot. Was and that day. I don't have any family. You're the closest thing that I have. And I have come to rely on you, and I am grateful for your company. I couldn't do this without you. Well, let's screw our courage to the sticking place and get them out of there. Yes. Yes. Let's get them home. Yes. Yes. Let's get them home. I want to find these people and rescue them is not to use them, and it's not because we've invested time in them, but it's because I love them. Yes. Let's get them home. Yes. Yes. Let's get them home. Yes. Yes. Let's get them home. Yes. Yes. Let's get them home.
I think perhaps it's destiny. Do you believe in destiny?
No, but
But you dream about islands and you go to them. I think it's important to follow one's feelings on such things. I commend you.
buzz. Something to buff us up a bit.
Some bees.
Some bees. Yep. I think some bees would suit you.
I just really want to see them.
We can talk to them.
I really want to talk to them.
I've talked to many bees in my time.
Really?
Yeah.
You can teach me the language?
I mean, you just, hey bees.
Hello, bees. Please come over here and let me say hello. Hello, bees. You can talk to them? Yeah, say something.
What do you want me to say to them? I don't know.
Tell them to come over here, but don't sting us.
Hold on. Let me do a thing. I think I'm coming to the realization that perhaps I was not entirely clear of what I signed up for, but I don't think that means that it's the wrong path. I'm getting used to the idea that this would be a test if it were easy. intention to continue on with us. I joined your group of friends, I guess our group of friends now, as a testament of faith, and it would be a disservice to that faith to turn around because it's hard. If it had been easy and
deserve to be rewarded when they can. I wanted to give you something that will make your time with us a little bit easier, I suppose.
Mr. Caleb, do you believe in fate?
I would like to think not.
Shaping you into something important, and I want to make sure that you get to wherever you need to be.
That's a pretty big matzo ball.
Even when we're not the best of people, I feel like we're still moving towards something that's good and worthwhile. And I'm feeling the struggles in my way to bring us to where we need to be.
Welcome to the 9.
I'm honored. I serve nature, and I'm the maker of fine graves.
favor. There's a ghost.
Where? No, that is a humanoid jellyfish.
It was really pretty. Keep your eyes forward.
It's so sad.
Why?
It's just here and unconnected. It's sad to be unconnected. Wish you could do something. What happened here?
You do not know the history of this land.
Not this part of the history, no.
I want to check for vibes.
For vibes.
Vibes.
Detect vibes?
Detect vibes. I want to Lebowski this
You
place.
walk into a room and know where people have had sex.
That's nice.
There's a place where you can burn the remains to an ash and something unusual springs forth.
Okay, we back.
There will hold that hero's mark. And this kiln will be the creations as a gift to the Allhammer to remind him.
These things fade once they learn the reality of war. But since ours had not yet absorbed that lesson, we were able to push them hard enough to catch up to our foes. Our force reached the woods a day before the Shades.
Hey, Bumblebee. How we doing?
The green frost is so named because it is filled with trees called pycnandra, which secrete a greenish sap. When winter comes, the trees freeze over, and the sap turns the ice green. Then it is like wandering through a forest of emerald and jade statues. They were still frozen when we passed through the wood. It was a breathtaking sight, though we had little time to appreciate its beauty. The path where the Shades entered the green frost to the east was winding and sinuous, but halfway through the wood the road straightened, and then it ran straight as an arrow's path until it reached the western end of the forest. It was on this straightaway that Kuhn planned our attack. Two's company had 5 squadrons, 3 of archers, including mine, and Mags and Yue's with swords. And then, of course, there were Kuhn's mystics, all carrying swords and shields, and each wearing chain. We deployed 2 squadrons of archers on the south of the road and my unit to the north. Kuhn would signal the attack by firing a flaming brand into the air, and the archers would loose. Our bowfire would sow confusion in the Shades' ranks, miring them down. Then would come the second strike. Kuhn's mystics would attack straight down the center, with Mag's squadron supporting him on the left and Yue's spears on the right. Kuhn knew we would not be able to stop the Shades entirely, not with only 100 of fighters. His idea was to make them retreat instead. We wanted them to run north, where the green frost gave way to a vast broad land with many hills and dells. "Captain," said Yue, when Kuhn told us the plan, "will they not vanish into the hills? How will we keep track of them?" "Indeed, we hope they try it, because it will not work," said Kuhn. He nodded to Mag. "Mag here knows this region. The land there is too gentle to block sight very well, nor will it let them funnel us into a trap, nor will the gentle slopes give them much of a high ground to defend. The hills only look impressive from a distance. Once inside, they will never leave again." It was a cunning ploy, and Mag and I were impressed. I think Kuhn could tell we approved, which seemed to please him despite himself. Something had changed in his attitude towards us. I did not get the sense that he trusted us, but no longer was he always suspicious of us. He spoke frankly with us as he laid out his plan. "I wish to impress upon you both," he said to Mag and me, "that your squadrons will be in the path of the Shade's retreat. You must withdraw the moment they move in your direction. I hope you understand that I am not placing you in this position out of any wish of harm to you. With your experience, I know, or hope, that you will be able to lead your squadrons in a disciplined retreat." Mag cracked a smile. "You can say what you mean, Captain, if you mean to imply we are cowards." Kuhn's small council erupted in laughter, which we all quickly cut off. The humor was a good thing. All our faces had been grim, and there are few things more harmful to a fighting force than for its commanders to be too moody. "Hardly," said Kuhn, smiling as usual. "Discipline and speed are all I ask of you. Maneuver west, swing around, and join the rest of us in pursuing them north." "As you wish, Captain," I said. "Good," said Kuhn. His smile lost some of its luster. "All that is left, then, is the waiting." All that is left, then, is the waiting. As any soldier with experience will tell you, the waiting is the worst part. I gathered my squadron and moved with them to the north, positioning them in the forest where Kuhn had directed us. Mag and her unit came with us. Our troops kept their eyes cast down at the ground, and their fingers were pale where they gripped their weapons. Only Halan seemed to be in better spirits, and that was only compared to the rest. His mouth was set in a firm line. He told no jokes, but kept his now spectacled gaze on the beautiful jade forest ahead. We stopped at Mag's position, and I turned to her to clasp wrists. "Take care of yourself," she said. "If you are killed, I shall be very cross with you." "And the same to you," I said. I glanced over her shoulder at her squadron. Lee stood there. Her gaze wandered like always, but her hands were shaking. Beside her was Dibu, who was as still as a rock. I stepped past Mag. "Listen to me," I said, loud enough to cut through their stupor. "I know your minds. I was there once. We all were. Even Mag, hard as it is to believe it." Gently I punched her in the shoulder. She responded with a chop under my bicep, and my whole arm lanced with pain. I shook it hard to get the needles out. "That is my drawing arm, you sow," I growled. Despite themselves, her squadron chuckled. "Yes," I told them, "that is how you should be feeling. Not thrilled, for you are not fools, but neither should you worry overmuch, for you have one great advantage in the battle you are about to fight. You have her. You have all heard stories of the uncut lady. Sky above, Dryleaf has told you plenty of them in the last weeks." I hooked my thumbs in my belt and threw my shoulders back. "Well, tonight Dryleaf is going to need you. He will need you to tell him tales about your sergeants, so he can add them to his trove. I have fought with Mag on more battlefields than most of you have years in your life. She will not let you down. She will do everything in her power, and that is considerable, to lead you home safe from the field. Do the same for her and each other, and you will be fine." As I spoke, I watched them straighten. They turned to look at Mag, and then back to me. And in that brief moment, fear turned to resolution. Once more I took Mag's wrist, and then I pulled her in for an embrace. There was nothing left to say, and so I led my squadron off. We were half a span away from Mag's squadron when Jeanne cleared her throat. "Well, Sergeant, have you any inspiring speech for us? I half thought Mag would speak on your behalf the way you spoke on hers." "And what did you think she would say?" I retorted. "You have little to hang your hope upon. You are, after all, stuck with me." That got a half-hearted laugh from all of them. I stopped and turned, for we had reached our position. No, but in all earnestness, the most comforting thing I can say to you is that you do not need any comforting today. For most of you, this is your first battle, and it may be the safest one you will ever see. You have an easy job today. Shoot an enemy when they do not know you are there, and flee before they can retaliate. I raised one finger. But there is something you must remember. You must listen for the moment when I sound the retreat, and you must for the moment when I must listen. You must listen. Something you must remember. You must listen for the moment when I sound the retreat, and you must stay close to me and to your squad mates when we pull back. Pay attention to your surroundings and pay attention to your surroundings and always keep an ear out for my call. What is far more important than killing the enemy? Staying alive, they all said in chorus. I drilled it into them hard enough. According to you, added Jian after a moment. Chausaku's nostrils flared, and his locks shook as he turned on her. Dark below, Jian. Be calm, you tree trunk, she told him, pushing her rakish hair off her forehead. It was a jest. I rolled my eyes. All right, find a tree to hide behind, and get ready.
Excuse me. Alright, I am going to try recording one more chapter of Yerrin, as opposed to continuing on with the Hellskin QC.
Chapter 13. Yerrin, Chapter 13. While they waited for Chet and the others to arrive, Lauren looked around the rooms they had been assigned. Yushan had put them in one of the manor's front wings, where 4 rooms had wide windows that overlooked the surrounding streets. Yushan had a servant draw drapes across these. "I doubt many in the city would recognize you, but it is best to take precautions," she said. "Thank you," said Lauren. "Think nothing of it," said Yushan. "I will have my servants fetch you something to eat. Do you take wine?" "As much of it as we can," said Jem. Lauren glared at him, and he flushed. "And, of course, we thank you for your generosity." Yushan chuckled. "Oh, I do like you, child. Someone will be along shortly." The food arrived just before their friends. Chet looked around cautiously when he was shown into the apartments. Uzo and Shiun went straight to their room once Lauren pointed it out. But Weil stood in the common room of the wing, looking about with pursed lips. And what does Weil sound like again? Oh, right, wrong book. Hello? Oh, you fucking idiot, Garrett.
Where did Weil appear? There we go. Chapter 7. Okay. Got my voice reference. I have to use the restroom real quick, and then we will continue. Okay. Oh, I'm jealous, Bumblebee. I'm hungry. Might actually eat breakfast today for the first time in a long time.
Passable, I suppose, he said. At least we are not paying for it. Oh, be silent, said Annis. You will be glad to learn you have a room to yourself, not out of courtesy, but because no one wishes to share it with you. I am glad indeed, said Weil. He went to the meal that had been laid out for them, ate a few bites and drank a cup of wine, and then made for the room Annis had indicated. And with that I bid you all good night. Wait! Nope. Wrong voice. Wait, said Lauren. You went out seeking information today. What did you learn? Nothing, said Weil, shrugging. I merely sent out word and asked for information to be gathered. These things take time, my dear. Lauren suppressed a growl as he went into his room and closed the door. She sat with the others and picked at the food, but her appetite had suffered after her angry words with June. She had not been sitting long, however, before a knock sounded at the door. Lauren glanced at Annis, but the girl only shrugged. Come in, said Lauren. The door opened to reveal Prince Senlin. Just behind him were Caradwen and the large bodyguard with the scar, who pushed into the room. Just behind him were Caradwen and the large bodyguard with the scar, who pushed into the room first, looking all around. When he was done, he ushered Senlin inside. Jem shot to his feet at once, bowing to the prince, and Annis and Lauren did the same a moment later. Your Excellency, said Annis. Lady Yerrin, said Senlin. I wonder, Nightblade, might I have a private word with you and your companions? Lauren's brows rose. Of course, Your Excellency, although there are more people than I think would fit comfortably. Uzo and Chiun, would you remain here? Chiun nodded at once. Of course, Nightblade, she said. Lauren motioned towards her room. Senlin made for the door, and Lauren followed, with Annis, Chet, and Jem behind her. But at the threshold, Senlin stopped and looked up at the bodyguard behind him. I wish to speak with them alone, Joe. The bodyguard frowned down at him. My duty is to see to your safety, Your Excellency. Senlin gave the man a frigid look, an odd expression in his soft, youthful face. There is only one way into the room. They are no threat, and no one else can harm me if you guard the door. You will remain here. Joe's face darkened, but he bowed his head and took a step back. Caradwen, however, remained by Senlin's side, and he did not order her away. They stepped into Lauren's room, Jem scampering in even though Lauren had not asked him to, and closed the door behind them. Inside were 2 fine armchairs. Senlin took one, but when Caradwen went to stand at his side, Lauren shook her head and waved towards the other. I will sit on the bed. You may have the chair. Caradwen blinked in surprise. I thank you, Nightblade. Quickly she went and sat next to the prince, looking somewhat uncomfortable. Lauren and Annis sat beside each other on the bed, while Jem sat on the floor by their feet. For a moment Lauren merely looked at the prince, and Senlin studied her in turn. The prince was little more than a boy, Jem's age, or may up a year or 2 older. He had a thin build. Everything about him looked scholarly and thoughtful, rather than noble and dashing. But Lauren could see a keen wit and a deep mind behind his eyes. She suspected they rarely missed a detail. Indeed, Senlin seemed somewhat akin to Annis, though he carried himself with greater confidence, likely the result of a lifetime where every need was attended to without question, to a degree that even Annis had never experienced. Senlin spoke first. I have heard tales of the Nightblade for some months now. I thought you would be a bit older. Lauren tilted her head. I mean you no offense, Your Excellency, but you yourself are hardly a grown man. Senlin smiled. Pardon me, that must have sounded like an insult. Indeed, I am heartened to find you so close to my age, and that goes double for your worthy companions. He gave Annis and Jem each a nod in turn, and they returned it, Jem somewhat more eagerly. I often feel that my age limits the influence I can have. It is heartening to meet people like you, who have managed to do so much good in so short a time. It might have been only flattery, but Lauren blushed all the same. Thank you, Your Excellency, she said. You are not lacking in kindness or grace. Senlin sighed and leaned back in his chair. Yet mayhap I lack in effectiveness. I came here to tell you that I do not disagree with what you said to my father. That piqued Lauren's interest. Oh? I fear my words may have been overly frank, even harsh. They were, yet they were not unearned, said Senlin. I am no fan of warfare, nor of fighting in general, and I do not think Dorsey's wars serve the greater good. Lauren gave Annis a look, recalling their conversation in the basement. Senlin must have been brought up learning the same laws of power as his father, yet he rose above them, or tried to. That at least was heartening. I thank you for your agreement, said Lauren. Yet I do not entirely understand how it helps. Will your father listen to your counsel, if that counsel is to cease his wars? Senlin sighed. He will not. Though I disagree with him, he does as he believes he must, and as the Senate pressures him to do. Victory in battle pleases them, and for the most part it pleases the people they serve. Without the Senate's support, my father's rule would be toothless. Because it is not, he is able to do great things for our people. So he does great good, but pays for it by doing great harm? Said Lauren. That is a weak justification in my mind. I will take a benevolent king, like King Anwar of Selvin, who can help his people without having to kill strangers. I have heard that Anwar is a good king, said Senlin. But what of his daughter? She will take the throne from him. But what of...
Oh, my throat. Did I make a mistake going for another chapter? Time will tell.
But what of his daughter? She will take the throne from him one day. What if she is mad or cruel? There will be no Senate to stay her hand from evil.
Lauren folded her arms.
Your Senate has done nothing to stay Wojan's hand. Give them time, said Senlin. We will depose Wojan with their help, or not at all. And then your father will resume his border wars in order to please his people and his Senate, said Lauren, growing ever more irritated. And even Dorshans who are brave enough to object will have to shrug their shoulders at the same time, because that is how Dorsey works. It is, said Senlin. For the first time he ducked his gaze as though ashamed. When I myself hold the throne, I hope to do things better, though I also hope it will be a long time before that happens, for I wish for a long life for my father. Rather than soothe her, Senlin's words only made Lauren more angry. I am not like you, Your Excellency, and I cannot know what your life is like, but I like to imagine at least that I would not be content to sit and watch as my father waged endless war. I am not content with it, he said, and I advise when I can, but I cannot stop him. I mean that in the strictest sense of the word. I cannot stop him. Therefore, I do not choose to Therefore, I do not choose to spend my time complaining about how things ought to be. I do what I can from my station. He must have seen Lauren tense, for he went on quickly. Please do not misunderstand me. I know it is not enough. That is why I find your story so heartening. No doubt you were raised in other circumstances, ones... No doubt you were raised in other circumstances, ones where you could act more directly. Lauren felt her wrath deflate at once. Senlin's words were far from accurate. She had been raised by cruel parents, and until her 16th year she had taken no action to change things. True, her parents' evil was directed only at her, not at any others. But she remembered the way they had treated her, the way they had quashed even the slightest sign of rebellion. What if they had harmed others? Could she really have stood up to them? It would have been hard, though she hated them and knew they hated her in turn. What if they had raised her with kindness and love, as Jun clearly had done for Senlin? Chet spoke, his words clipped. Forgive me, Your Excellency, but I think you underestimate just how sky-blessed your life has been. You say you cannot change things in your kingdom, but mayhap you would not feel the same way if you yourself were threatened with the consequences of your father's wars. That is enough, Chet, said Lauren quietly. The room fell silent for an overlong moment. Senlin bowed his head and folded his hands over each other. I fear I have cast a shadow over our meeting. I apologize, for that was not my intent. I look forward to seeing you again upon the morrow, and I hope that we may all find a way to achieve our ends together. That is all I wished to say. He stood, and the others did the same. But before he could go, Lauren stepped forth and put out a hand. I thank you, Your Excellency. And forgive us if we spoke too harshly, now or before. I often forget that the world is nowhere near so simple as I would like it to be. Senlin's thin brows rose. Then he reached forth and took her wrist. They shook once, firmly. Thank you, Nightblade. I think we both have a great deal to learn from each other, you and I. He turned to go, but Caradwen stepped forwards quickly and spoke. Your Excellency, might I remain for a moment? The prince looked at her in surprise. Of course, he said. You are no servant, Caradwen, though my father and I greatly appreciate your aid in these dark days. Caradwen nodded, and Senlin finally left them. Lauren caught one glimpse of Joe, the bodyguard, outside the door. He appeared to have been engaged in a staring contest with Uzo and Shiun in the common room. When Senlin emerged, he quickly moved to escort the prince out of the room. The door shut behind them, and Caradwen turned back to Lauren. I have heard many stories about you. Are they true? Jem's eyes lit up like the moon's. Burp. Oh, boy. Oh, y'all keep talking about food in chat. Torturing me. Fuck. Missed my cue. Lauren tried to ignore him. I do not know what stories you have heard. Likely some are truer than others. Is it true that you saved the High King and the Lord Prince? Lauren's cheeks flamed. I found a way out of the palace when it was attacked, but many others helped in the escape. Some gave their lives. Before that, Chet took a dagger in the chest as he defended the Lord Prince. It was nothing, said Chet at once, but he lifted a hand, tracing his fingers over the place where the dagger had nearly pierced his heart. Caradwen slumped. She moved to the armchair that Senlin had been in and sank into it. I wish I could have done something like that. When Wojin attacked the palace, I mean, and we were forced to flee. That gave Lauren pause. She had spoken to few enough people about her actions upon the seat. Mostly it had been Cal, who seemed to think she might have done a better job of her rescue. Yet King Jun and Prince Senlin survived in the end. No thanks to me, said Caradwen. It was Joe, the king's right-hand man, and the one who came here with Senlin and me, who rescued all of us. I only followed along, protected by others, but protecting no one. Lauren gave Annis a pointed look. Annis had often spoken similar words, bemoaning her own role by Lauren's side and her uselessness in a fight. Annis's mouth twisted, and she shook her head. Lauren smiled and went to sit in the armchair beside Caradwen. "And who are you, exactly?" said Lauren. "Are you some kin of the royal family?" Line came out weird. "Are you some kin of the royal family?" Caradwen shook her head and held up her arms. "In these clothes? I have often worn disguises when I did not wish to be recognized." Ooh, spit! "In these clothes? I have often worn disguises when I did not wish to be recognized, and you have been walking the city's streets." "That is true enough," said Caradwen. "But no, I am only an apothecary, and from my parents I have learned some skill in healing." "But there you have it," said Lauren. "You have no reason for shame. If you have been practicing for any time at all, you have probably rescued more people than I have. I can only save lives by fighting. The world would be a worse place if everyone were like me, but a better one if all were like you." Caradwen laughed. "I agree with you there. Yet still I wish I could do more, or that I could have done more than I did." She paused for a moment, fixing Lauren with an appraising look. Lauren met her gaze, feeling a twisting in her stomach. "I agree with you, you know. I know that His Grace's actions are wrong." Lauren frowned. "So does Prince Senlin, yet that does nothing to stop King Jun." "I do not agree with His Excellency either," said Caradwen, shaking her head. "War has never come to Danfon in my lifetime, yet we feel its effects even this far north. Often our warriors return from battle gravely wounded, or even without limbs. Sometimes they have a sickness of the mind instead, a memory of death and pain that they can never banish. Dorshans honor our soldiers above all others. They risk their lives for the good of the kingdom, or at least that is how they see it, no matter how misguided our wars. Yet those wars often leave them a wreck, in mind as well as in body. I am put face to face with such maladies. The prince is not. I think it makes him more complacent than he might be. He contents himself with his principles, though they accomplish no tangible change." "And what do you do?" said Annis quietly. "When you see these soldiers, I mean, what is your answer to King Jun's wars?" "In one respect, In one respect, Prince Senlin is right," said Caradwen. "I can do nothing to stop His Grace from waging battle, and I know he faces pressure from the Senate. Yet neither am I content to wait, as His Excellency is. Instead, I tell myself that I will grow. I will learn more, I will gain more influence, and I will do better next time. I hope that one day it comes true, if we survive all of this. Lauren nodded slowly. I think I prefer your way of thinking to the prince's. Caradwen smiled and cast her eyes down. Then she stood abruptly from the chair. I had better leave and let you get your rest. But I thank you for the opportunity to speak. Of course, said Lauren, rising to see her out. I am glad you found us, Caradwen, and I hope you will come speak with us again, any time you wish. I would enjoy that. Only please, you must call me Carrie. Only His Grace and His Excellency call me Caradwen, and as a consequence it seems frightfully formal. Lauren smiled. Very well, Carrie. She held the door as Carrie left, and then closed it softly. Turning to Annis and Jem, she raised her brows. Today has been a day, she said. It has been that, said Annis. These people are somewhat strange to me, yet I think I like Carrie, I suppose, the best. And I, said Lauren. Then she noticed Jem wore a grin that split his face from ear to ear. What are you giggling about? She had heard of you, said Jem triumphantly. She had heard tales of the Nightblade. Jem shook her head, trying to ignore the flush that crept up her neck. Be silent, Jem. Oh, my voice is not doing well. Excuse me. Ugh. Lord Almighty. Oh. Which last couple of sentences? Sorry, I don't have chat open while I'm recording. Prince Senlin is right, said Caradwen. I can do nothing to stop His Grace from waging battle, and I know he faces pressure from the Senate. Yet neither am I content to wait, as His Excellency is. Instead, I tell myself that I will grow. I will learn more. I will gain more influence. And I will do better next time. She had heard of you, said Jem triumphantly. Jem shook her head, trying to ignore... Thank you very much. You, said Jem triumphantly. She had heard tales of the Nightblade. Trying to ignore... Tales of the Nightblade. Lauren shook her head, trying to ignore the flush that crept up her neck. Be silent, Jim.
That is audio editing right there. Oof. Yeah, rough recording time on that one. Yep, 4 years of experience at a sound studio recording audiobooks has taught me a few tricks. One or two things. Oof. All right. I'm going to QC one more chapter of Hellskin before I end off with some Elden Ring. I got that. I got time.
Chapter 21. It was I who loosed the first shot. That makes me sound like the quickest archer on the field, but if I'm being honest with you, it is because I forgot that Kuhn was supposed to give us a signal to attack. The shades came marching down the forest road from the east. Their dark forms slid in and out of view between the emerald trunks of the trees, like imps half-glimpsed in the wild. I watched them come, wrapped thick in their cloaks of blue. None were on horses, and they all bent wearily under their packs and bedrolls. They looked to be far more tired than our company, for we had been able to leave most of our equipment and supplies back with the main force. Near the head of the column was a giant of a woman who gave me pause. It was Tagata, as you might be able to guess, but of course I had never seen her before. She was massive, towering over the shades all around her, with muscles thick as anything. She wore no extra clothing against the rainy chill, and her skin glistened with a sheen of sweat in the afternoon air. I swallowed hard. The first Shadeborn I had met was Triskin, who slew Jordell. When I first saw Rogan, I recognized in him the same strength, the same viciousness. I saw it again in this woman now. That meant shooting her would be useless, even if I were to plant an arrow in her eye. Therefore, I chose the closest shade to me as a target instead. He was a young man, may up in his 20th year. His pale cheeks were rosy with heavy breaths that misted in the cold. He was not wary, nor was he looking about for any sign of attack. He would not even know he was in danger before he was dead. I sighed and waited for the right moment, but as I said, I forgot about Kuhn's signal. Fortunately for me, Kuhn and I had the same idea of when the right moment was. I must have loosed my arrow at the same instant that Kuhn fired his flaming brand into the sky. At the same time that my shaft sank into the young man's neck and he fell to the ground, gurgling, a searing hiss sounded in the air. Shouts erupted from the woods all around us as our soldiers saw the signal. Flights of arrows ripped through the air to land among our foes. The shades recoiled into each other and drew their weapons, but their movements were slow, sluggish, burdened with the weight of leagues behind them. Slow, sluggish. Movements were slow, sluggish. Sluggish. But their movements were slow, sluggish, burdened with the weight of leagues behind them. All but the brute woman. In an instant, her greatsword was in her hand, shining in the thin sunlight through the clouds. She gave a battle cry that shook the trees, and the shades jumped in response. Suddenly there was vigor in their steps, and they tried to form into ranks. We loosed another volley, the third for me. Our hail of arrows struck the blue cloaks, and I watched them fall. We were silent. What use a battle cry when you were almost a span away and drawing no closer? Our only sound was the hissing song of death flying on wings of fletching. Then...
I'm proud of that line.
Then Kuhn led his charge, and the air filled with their roar. 150 of mystics came charging from the trees, and at their flanks were Mag's squadron and Yue's spears. Snow turned red as blood splashed across it. The shades reeled back. Their allies behind them tried to shove them forwards again, but they only pushed them onto our blades. I saw Lee there. She stood side by side with her fellows, but she was hesitant, the tip of her sword shaking. A shade lunged at her with a savage roar. Lee blocked his strikes, but she did not retaliate, and as she stepped back, her foot slipped in the blood-red snow. Before the shade could finish her off, Debu was there. His sword hacked into the shade's raised sword arm. The man screamed, but only for a moment before Debu stabbed him through the gut. Another shade ran up.
Wait, Cameron, was that you? I was just thinking of that. I didn't remember if that was you.
Another shade ran up. Debu traded 2 blows and then slammed the edge of his shield into her face. She reeled back, nose broken. Debu's sword hacked at her neck, nearly severing her head. She flopped to the ground. With a moment of space to breathe, Debu turned and hauled Lee to her feet. She was still shaking, but she nodded at him. Together they plunged again into the fray, driving the shades back. But alone among the shades, the brute held. Kuhn's mystics broke like a wave around her, and she, like a boulder in the surf, held them off until they had to withdraw. Her great sword came around in a grand sweep. A handful of red cloaks struck the bloody slush, never to rise again. A curse slipped out of me. I had lost sight of Mag in the press. Like a boulder in the surf. I'd lost sight of Mag in the press. Hopefully she would recognize the woman's power from my descriptions of Tristan. If she could strike at the tattoo I guessed was on the back of her neck, we might bring her down, which would be a grievous blow to the shades. And then a raven swooped out of the sky, and I forgot all about Mag and the brute. The raven plunged straight into the shades' midst. No natural bird would have landed there during a battle. And if I needed any more confirmation, it came in a flash of mage light. Soon Kaita of mage light. Mage light. Mage light. Flash of mage light. Soon Kaita was visible among the press, shouting orders to her fellows. I could not take my eyes from her. My drawing hand had stilled, and no shafts flew from my string. Halan paused in his firing, looking at me strangely. He reached over and seized my shoulder, shaking it. "Sergeant, he cried. I roused myself from my thoughts. Kaita could wait. Where was Mag? Still I could not see her, but there was the brute woman, holding the shade line firm. "Everyone," I cried, "if you were a good enough shot not to hit our allies, loose your arrows at the giant." I pointed her out, as if they needed help to spot her, and then drew and fired my arrow. 6 more shafts joined mine. 2 missed, but that still sent 5 arrows slamming into her chest, her neck, her arms. The brute reeled back. The shades around her buckled in dismay. Now the mystics pressed forwards. 3 sank blades deep into the brute's torso. I watched her cough up blood. My gaze darted back to Kaita. She looked at the brute woman and she screamed. In anger? In grief? I did not know, for I could not hear. One ambitious mystic swung his blade for the brute's neck, but she was not as grievously wounded as he thought. But she was not as grievously wounded. Brute's neck, but she was not as grievously wounded as he thought. With a roar, she caught his sword in her hand. It sank into the flesh, but she gritted her teeth and bore it. Then she seized the mystic around the neck and crushed his face with her forehead. His whole body went limp, and he fell to the ground. The other red cloaks drew back, nervous. That gave the brute the moment she needed to stand. Even as I watched, her skin began to stitch over the gaping wounds in her body. She drew in ragged breaths and hefted her greatsword again. But another volley of arrows fell upon the shades, and more of them dropped to the ground. The brute looked back at her allies, and I saw her hesitate. She did not know if there were more soldiers in these woods, waiting to pounce. As the muscles in her jaw spasmed and then clenched as hard as iron, she raised her greatsword and pointed it north. "Retreat!" she cried, and the word shook the very air, though her voice was thick with the blood in her lungs. "North! Retreat!" I looked to Kaita again. She had taken up the call as well, shoving the shades around her towards the trees, towards us. And then I saw Mag. She and her squadron had begun to fall back, retreating before the shades as Kun had ordered. But Mag had stopped. She was looking at Kaita, who stood amid the shades a span away. Their eyes met across the battlefield. Both of them stood motionless, gazes locked. Around Kaita, the shades fled straight towards us, towards the trees that promised safety. Around Mag, her squadron wavered, unsure, not wishing to abandon their sergeant. "Mag!" My voice cut through the battle. Mag swiveled to look at me. But there was Kaita. Mag turned back. "Mag!" I barked again. Her gaze drew inexorably back to me. "Not yet." She heaved a great sigh, and she nodded, turning to her squad. I saw her order the retreat, though I could not hear the words. "Retreat!" I called out. "West, into the woods!" My unit looked ready to melt with relief, for the shades were now only half a span away. They began to head west, but I hesitated a moment more, looking back towards Kaita. She had not moved. She was looking at Mag, even as Mag's unit withdrew. And in that moment, it was as if I could hear the silent words in her mind. "Not yet," I had said. And now I heard Kaita promise, "But soon." I turned and followed my squadron. The shades fled north towards the hills, just as Kun had planned, and we gathered to wait for the rest of our forces to catch up.
Oof. All right. Boom. Okay. Mm-mm-mm. Time to die horribly in increasingly creative ways. Alright. What am I looking for? I'm done trying to beat this fucking piece of shit. So I'm gonna go looking for some other things that I've wanted. Oh, you know what I could just get first is the map. The final map piece. Wait, where do I even go to get that? Isn't there a map piece? What am I missing? Okay, there's that. Huh. I'm facing straight towards the final map fragment, which is over there somehow? Behold, jump attack. Huh. Oh no! Oh! 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 Yeah. No, that was my bad. I hit the wrong button. Oh, I fell off a cliff. How to reach consecrated snowfield. Okay, I got the secret medallion right. Where's the secret medallion left? Oh my god. Where is Castle Soul, please? Oh, it's you. Okay. Oh boy. A whole ass castle, huh? Okay, so they're... Oh, that's interesting. Hmm. I don't know what an ass castle is, but I'll recognize it when I see it. Now that's a guy who puts the ass in castle. Why does this look like a thing? No, right? Yeah. Oh, okay. Aha! I've seen this before. It did not go well. The beast eye quivers. I don't like that. Okay, well, what? I can't even target that thing. So what the hell? Ah! No, thank you. What? Stop it. Oh, no. These are not the snails I have seen before. This, everything about this sucks. This is, I hate all of it. This is all terrible. No! I hate all of you. Dead in the cold. So big and scary too. When you're an ice skeleton. What the fuck is that fucking thing? What the fuck is that fucking thing? What the fuck is that fucking thing? What the fuck's that fucking thing? Deathrite bird, don't kill me. Please don't kill me, please. Deathrite bird, leave me alone. Leave me alone. Fuck right off. Fuck. Nope. Not what I... Nope. Oh, boy. That was terrible. Holy fucking shit. All right, so I'm just gonna run straight to the site of grace. I don't know what the fuck this Deathrite bird is or why it has such a hate boner for me, but I need it to stop. Ah! What the fuck? What the fucking... It's not chasing me, right? Okay, well, I got to the castle. Okay. Nope. Yeah, that's my bad. Oh, it's so much stronger than ones I've seen before. Yeah. Oof. Wow. My timing, though. So good. Much skill. Yep, okay. Cool. Am I, like, just massively underleveled for this? Am I just not even vaguely ready for this? It's more likely than you think. Holy fucking shit. Tranquility required ahead. Okay. Because holy fuck. Yeah, I maybe need to go wrap up some of the other bosses before I head straight into this castle. Fucking A. Alright, time for me to go. it's a pretty day outside. Oh. Let us raid Ray Music is live.
Rivers wide and Tokyo.
Shoosh. Okay, everyone. I'm off for the day. I will be back tomorrow morning for another early stream. We're chunking our way through the audiobooks. We finished the monthly admin. That feels really good. So it's time to get back to doing the things that result in done books. I also have a little project that I'm going to try to squeeze in this month. I don't know exactly when. I might be a little later than normal because tonight is D&D night, so I'm probably going to be up a little later. Yeah, I'll see you sometime tomorrow morning whenever I get on stream at last. Thank you for coming and hanging out, Cameron, Scoldsbane, and Bumblebee. Y'all rock, and I will catch you next time. Bye.
To pour the name, I know all these memories.